Economic development happens when money comes from outside a region into the region.
It's our job to serve people and to make their lives better.
I spend a lot of time in Garfield County, Enid in particular.
That's probably one of the hardest things, to get the good title.
Everyone deserves help.
And he's been very instrumental in trying to make this deal work out.
We're basically self-insuring 100% of the loss.
Now having a new measurement tool to make certain we're ready.
My old friend.
Some girls have even led adoption drives for local rescue agencies.
I want to try to focus on the things out of life that are positive.
City Connections begins right now.
Hello again and welcome to City Connections. I'm Steve Kime with the City of Enid. Thank you for joining us today. You know, oftentimes I can be out in the Enid community, stand in line, try to get a sandwich made, or just at a restaurant or walking the sidewalk. You'd be amazed at the number of people that would come up to me and say, Steve, have you considered so-and-so as a guest on City Connections? And sometimes people call me on the phone or they email me, but oftentimes it's an in-person visit when somebody has seen a City Connection show and they have someone on their mind. Well, I certainly appreciate the recommendations because we want to have the guest on this show that highlight Enid, and of course Oklahoma, but also the guests that you desire to see. And that's what happened when I had Ken Corbin and Corbin Merz. Did I say that right,
Yeah,
Merz?
sure did.
Should have asked you that a little bit earlier. Well, these two gentlemen were presented to me months ago, and it's taken a while in their hectic schedule to get them here to the Enid Television Network studios today. So Ken, welcome. Appreciate you being here. John, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And how's it feel to be recommended to be on this show?
It's an honor.
Absolutely.
It's an honor to be in Enid.
Well, let's assume that somebody from Washington, D.C. or L.A. or Cleveland is watching this interview because it'll be live streamed later on around the globe. And it'll be on YouTube that everybody can see. So we have a little bit larger audience than Garfield County, gentlemen. So when we're talking today, let's think big picture. So therefore, the first question, what does your architect firm do? And what do you guys do? I know your two names are merged together as architects. So what's that all about?
Well, I might start out by saying we do buildings, as the name might imply. We're architects, and in a community the size of Enid, we're involved in many different building types. It's not a firm that is large enough to do a specific building type like you often run into in metro areas. And we do a little of everything. We regard every project as a research and a challenge, and we like the variety. We're very much at home in a community this size and the variety of projects that it offers to architects.
We'll talk a little bit later on in the show about those variety of projects. Both of you have provided me this laundry list of projects you've been involved in, and I thought I was enlightened in what you all did. But once I started reviewing that project list, it was very extensive, and we'll look at that in just a few moments. Well, John, let's go back to the beginning. Why and how did you become this architect? Where did that all start?
Well, I tell you, I've always, growing up, I always enjoyed working with my hands. I enjoyed woodworking. I enjoyed a lot of math, sciences, problem-solving type classes in school.
Sounds like a serious kind of guy, huh?
He's very serious.
But putting those together, I didn't really have any idea going in of where I wanted to do and when I got to college, and it was actually a suggestion from my mom. She said, you may want to look into architecture. And I just never thought about that. I hadn't considered that as a major. When I looked into it, it just seemed there's a lot of things there that were exciting to me. I was interested in. And you get into the program at the school, and I just ate it up. It was just really enjoyable and challenging.
It's interesting that you said the math and scientist part, because we had Bob Zoll. Bob was on this show months ago, but he had a real strong interest in math and sciences, but he had a teacher at Enid High School and called him Bobby. Said, Bobby, you ought to consider this architect world and stuff like that. So it was that interest in science and math that got you started, and also another individual that I know. Ken, how about you? How did it all start?
Well, mine started, by the way, we know Bobby Zoll. We see him at continuing education all the time.
Yeah.
My first feeling that I might want to become an architect was high school mechanical drawing, which those days involved drawing gears and
I remember drawing box
plans for knife holders and stuff like that. But anyway, the instructor had a set of architectural plans there on the shelf, and I was looking at them, and I was just totally infatuated with the plans. I've always been interested in buildings, but as far as actual production of the documents for a building, that was my first dose, was a high school mechanical drawing teacher. This is back when it was mechanical drawing. There were no computers. It was triangles, T-squares, erasers, and stuff like that. And that was my spark. So
I know what the eraser part was for sure, because I was using it quite a bit.
Sometimes used to say architects should have an eraser for an index finger. But anyway, that was my first. And a teacher can make a lot of difference, and that just by simply having something in front of you. Yeah. So that was my story.
I haven't heard that phrase T-square in many years.
Yes, they're a collector's item almost.
John, let's go back to you. You talked about once you got into formal education, and the architectural program, if you will. It was hand in glove. It was picture perfect for you. So tell us about your background, where you went to school, and I'm dangerously assuming that you went to additional training for architecture school.
I graduated from Enid High in 1986, and then went to Oklahoma State University. And it's a 5-year program to get your Bachelor of Architecture there. And I did some additional courses at Oklahoma Baptist University before I went to OSU, so it took me an extra year to get in through the program. And so, but that's actually, when I was at OSU, that's where I first met Ken. He was brought in by the staff as a judge for a student competition that I was in, and one of the professors while I was there saying, you need to talk to this guy. He's from Enid. He's got an architecture firm there, and this was when I was a second year student there, so I took him up on that and gave him a call, and we visited about it, and I worked a couple summers for Ken while I was still in school. But after I got my Bachelor of Architecture, you go through a 3-year internship program where you're required to work in a professional office under the tutelage of another architect. And after that, then you sit for your licensing exam, which is about a 3-day. Well, at that time, you take it all at once, and it's about a 3-day test.
That's a great answer, because it just confirms to me that I was not ever and was never going to be a math and science person, and just laboring through all the stuff you went through. Okay, I knew I was on the right track to avoid all of that. Yeah. Well, Ken, how about you?
I ended up at OSU. My parents went there. I had an aunt who encouraged me to go to OU, but she was not in the house all day long. So anyway, I ended up at OSU, and there again, I had a great time. As the first couple of years when you're in your general courses, it's a general education, and then as you narrow down in there again, I went the 5-year program for a bachelor's degree. For the last 3 years, you kind of get into more of your almost completely architecture courses, art courses, architectural history courses, things that you basically think you're focusing on. And it's a great experience for me, and to kind of get into the story of meeting John was after graduating, I was still familiar with the instructors, and they invited me over to jury student projects, and John was a very outstanding student, and his project was one that we selected as the best project, and then that kind of piqued my interest. And I think I remember asking John where he was from. He may have come also from the professor, but I remember and he said, from Enid. I said, well, I'm from Enid also. I kind of remember that conversation somewhere in there. But anyway, it was kind of a university experience, brought two people of different age groups together there, and kind of a really unique situation there. So that was fortuitous for us both, I think.
The list they gave me was about 4 feet long of all the projects they've been involved in. And again, it just really raised the awareness what these two gentlemen and their team and their staff has been involved in. But I want to share just a few of these with you. If you go into the Weimer Brownlee office lobby, which is one of the most gorgeous lobbies, to me, when I walk in there, it's like Pretty Boy Floyd. It's the 1920s. I mean, it's just a gorgeous lobby. You've done some things for the Enid Police and Fire, Garfield County Courthouse, a lot of commercial projects. Schools is within your list of things to do. OBA, Enid Public Schools, Chisholm, just to name a few. There was church-related projects, medical facilities at Integris, and that's not counting the residential projects. So the question is, here's this very diverse group. Does that help keep you fresh on ideas versus just, say, working on residential all the time?
That's a very perceptive question, and the answer is yes. Human nature, I think, is if you've done something once, the easy path is to do it again, and there are things to be gained from that. You learn from the experience. You've done this before. The second time, you know what the problems were the first time. But more importantly, I think, is widening your horizons, researching, going out and visiting buildings that have been done of a different type, and the research and the development, I think, is key to keeping your mind fresh in our profession. I really think it's an advantage to have a variety.
John, when I listed all those different entities, from commercial buildings downtown to hospitals, and the list goes on, what comes to mind? Was there just a great experience in one of those, said, you know, this was a signature piece for our organization? And
there's been so many projects.
Can you narrow it down to 70?
There's just been so many projects. I've just been thrilled to be able to say that I've been a part of, just in whatever manner. I think some of the ones that really I really enjoyed was I really enjoyed working with Ken was the primary architect on this, on the David Allen Ballpark. That was just, when it came in the office, we knew that it was going to be a special project. It was a real special cause, and the people were very excited about what it could be, and it just was really a beautiful gift to the city, and they had a really clear vision of what they were interested in, and that was very, very exciting project work. Just where you're doing something that is not terribly complicated as far as technicality, and just making a very simple idea in a place where people just go and enjoy themselves, and trying to make a space that's conducive to that. I think that was a very fun project. Is working with the police department on their renovation. I really enjoyed that, and we've done a lot of. It's hard to narrow it down to just one, but particularly with the police department, one of the things that was fun to see, and there's a lot of them that fall into this, is where you see where somebody brings an idea and the goal is to turn it into something more than what they expected. And if by the end of the day they say they just had no idea, they were really excited about the direction it was going, and that's really very pleasurable.
And I think that's great security for an organization or a company as yours. Anytime that you exceed those expectations, people had a tendency to come back. So, Ken, let me ask you, John had talked a little bit about some of the other projects. Let's focus on schools for a moment. Why don't you just let people know some of the school projects? I mentioned OBA and Chisholm and Enid Public Schools, but what are some things that come to mind if I say, okay, what are some of the projects that you worked on regarding schools?
One of the reasons I came to Enid, we've talked about the college experience. I'm from Kingfisher originally. Is I looked at Oklahoma City and Tulsa. I'd been in Seattle after the college. But Enid has, pound for pound, one of the strongest architectural communities in the state at that time. I thought the strongest. Obviously, in a large metro, you're going to have more big, but great clients. It starts with a client. Enid has a great client base, and we've been fortunate that they have helped us with our careers by giving us some of these opportunities. And I just don't think enough can be said about that, because if you don't have, it takes a client to do a building. And without that, it's like a three-legged stool. You got a contractor, architect, and client. If you don't have the client, you don't have a project.
And the schools that you were involved in.
Okay. One of the ones that keeps coming back, and it's still in use after 35 years, 40 years, is the Paul Ether Fieldhouse. It's an older building. The fact that it's still used for a major tournament, and considered one of the better venues for high school sports, and we pioneered the concourse coming in at the top and going down to the seats in a high school facility here. Yeah. But that's been a very pleasant. The Enid High Food Court and Classroom Edition, OBA, we did the original academic building, the Advanced Learning Center, and we've done a string of projects now for Chisholm. That was the first building we did for Chisholm. We followed through with new elementary school, and we're doing work currently. We have work in progress for Pleasant Vale. We're doing new elementary school for them. Those are just a few of the projects. The thing, I think you're after the kind of the, what is the motivational thing about schools. The teachers are so appreciative for any space that they can get or anything, just with adequate wiring, lighting, and if you can give them something that is inspiring to them and the kids, I think they're one of the most grateful, and we're grateful for them for what they do for our kids. But it's just a great experience because they don't take anything for granted, and a good learning facility, and they're just euphoric about it.
Well, again, thank you for joining us today on City Connections. One of the most requested group are these two gentlemen here on the show today, Ken Corbin and John Merz, architects here in Enid, Oklahoma. We're going to find out what's on their to-do list, and I'm going to give them the opportunity to offer maybe some words of wisdom for maybe a young person that's considering architecture. We'll all do that right after this. Thanks for staying with us on City Connections. Welcome back to City Connections. Thank you so much for staying with us today. I appreciate your time to join us as we talk with Ken Corbin and John Merz, two local architects here in Enid, Oklahoma, as we share their background and things that they've been involved in, extensive list of projects. John, let me start with you. Is there, when you look back of all those projects, was there one, and you may not want to say the company name or the project, but was there one that was really challenging? Maybe it presented some different, man, I don't know. How are we going to do this, Ken, kind of deal?
You know, there's different types of challenging projects on that. There's some of them when we're doing work with Integris or hospital type related projects, whether it's Integris or other facilities, but that brings on another level of just requirements that you need to research, and they're just their technical information of what they are required to do in their job and how you could facilitate that. But to me, as far as a challenge is a lot of times even working on a residential project, which may not be challenging from a technical perspective, but the expectations are very keen on the part of the owner. It's very personal to them, and they have a very vested interest in the project, which I mean they all do. But people, when you're working on a personal project to them, it's usually they're coming to you with years of thinking about it and excitement build up, and then you're just kind of starting off and trying to catch the idea of what they're trying to accomplish. And sometimes in those types of projects can be very challenging from a professional perspective.
Well, Ken, since you're the most serious one in the room today, this question is directed at you.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about some fun projects that you all have worked on. What comes to mind?
I think they're fun in general if you can accomplish a creative solution to problems or program requirements. There's a great deal of satisfaction. There are some that the general public may perceive as more fun. For example, a ballpark it's America's pastime. It's a great time. It's where you go out to relax, whereas a surgery room, an operating room, is not exactly a festive space.
Not as glamorous.
No, but the satisfaction in getting one that functions beautifully and that is clean and sterile and the air quality is what is needed. So there are different types of, and that's one thing great about, and we kind of touched on this with the different types of projects. Each has its own, the commonality there is a challenge and overcoming or rising to a challenge and solving it. So I think I can tell you projects that would be more festive and fun in the eyes of the public, and obviously things that are designed for recreation and fine homes, and these things are, but On the other hand, if you say those are the most festive and the most satisfying projects, you're not addressing the OR or the police department.
Sure.
So it's kind of difficult. That's a very difficult question. I hope I'm getting up that they're all.
Well, that's the reason I asked. I wanted it to be very difficult for you and challenging.
It is.
So,
I can't answer that, Steve.
I tell you, one of the projects that comes to my mind.
That's a great answer.
One of the projects that comes to my mind is tied to the city of Enid. They approached us several years ago to do a new home for their antique carousel house in Meadow Lake Park.
Right.
And that was just a truly enjoyable project. The site was absolutely beautiful, just situated there where you're looking out over the lake. And to design something which was just simply really an iconic shed, just something to kind of, and we looked at it as trying to make something that, because the carousel was fairly large, so it became kind of a structural design idea, and trying to use materials and things that were maybe not mimicking, but or in the same palette of materials that you might see in the prime heyday of the carousel houses and things like that. So that was a fun project. I really enjoyed it.
Before our taping today, we were talking about high ceilings. That's a building with a very high ceiling.
Yes, it is.
When you were talking about the carousel building. Okay, either one of you gentlemen can answer this if you would, please. Well, let's assume we don't know a lot about the process. Somebody hits their wife and says, I think we need an architect on this project, or a businessman is thinking of expansion or whatever the topic may be. Can you kind of walk us through the process? How does this work? How does the client and the two of you, kind of meet?
An interesting story to start with, anyway. One of the homes that we've done that I'm most fond of, the program. First, you have a program. You make contact with the client, and they have a program, which in architectural words is what spaces, what does it need to do, what do we need to achieve here. But it was brought on the back side of a piece of Christmas wrapping paper. They had their discussion on whether to start the home and around the Christmas tree, apparently, and there was a kind of scribbly little ballpoint drawing of a house plan on the back side of some Christmas wrapping paper, and can you do something with this? And this is kind of our ideas. And I said, that's great. And we all a very common question is, what do we need to do? Just like to get started, just bring us a list of your ideas or something on the back of a napkin. That's the starting point, and that's really all you need. It's not a difficult process at all.
Very good for clearing that up. Okay, what's on John, I'll ask you, on the dream list, the to-do list? Maybe you can't share particular clients, but is there, as a local organization, is there something that's on our bucket list or dream list? Is there anything that comes to mind? Golden Gate Bridge, something like that?
Hey, that's been done before. I like that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There's one of those out on the West Coast. Okay, we don't need one here in Enid.
Need some water.
Yeah.
I'd love to do a dream TV station for Enid.
Okay.
I think that'd be a great project.
Okay. Yeah. And the first step, according to Ken, is sit down, draw it out on a napkin.
What do you
You
need?
can use your note cards there, and just on the back side, if you can get something to stick to that cellophane.
Well, that would be nice. And my next meeting with big ideas, I'm going to say, well, John Merz said they'd be more than willing to help us out with drawing this out. Okay, we need to close our show, gentlemen. Thank you for being gracious with your time today to be here at the Enid Television Network studios. I'd like for you to kind of speak to the students, if you will. There's a young person, could be 5th grade or 12th grade, or the list goes on, but they're watching this interview and they're thinking about sciences and math and options there, careers and architects. So and I'd like to give both of you that opportunity. What would you say? And John, I'll start with you. What would you say to that student? As a word of encouragement, I guess.
I'd encourage them to just, if you're still in the high school area and still considering options, I'd start off by just coming and talking to somebody in the profession. Just ask questions, kind of find out what it's about, what it's like. Well, a lot of times we'll have students come in quite regularly. They'll come in and just do that. They're starting to get to the age where they feel like they need to start making a decision and it's an interest to them. while in school, I'd recommend looking at art classes, anything that's 3D related. If they could, sculpting, woodworking. It doesn't have to be a class. It could be a hobby. It could be something you do at home. Anything like that that gets you to where you're kind of looking at materials, looking at things tangibly. If you could volunteer on a build project for somewhere or work in a construction company. There's a lot of different avenues you could go that just is kind of getting you exposed to how things go together, what you could do as far as, and it's not just all technical. It's how can you develop an eye for what would be a good idea or a beautiful composition, or things along that line.
Ken, in closing, how about you? What's your
I would totally
guidance?
agree with math, science, a very important art. You can take the form of sketching, like John said, woodworking, handicrafts. I think also, and this maybe is a later, I think it's important, to, as we've mentioned, to go to the office. Even if you don't understand what's going on, you can see, you can feel the atmosphere. You can see, is this the kind of situation I want as a career? You can get that feel without knowing a whole lot about what they're doing. Are they sitting down too much? Are they standing up? Just are they enjoying themselves? Is there enthusiasm here that I want to pursue in my life? And then later, of course, when I was in college, one of the things they asked you to do was intern in the summer, and John interned in our office. In fact, it was a requirement. One of the architects in Enid, I interviewed in Enid one summer, and two of them were busy, and the other guy said, "Go push a wheelbarrow. You'll learn more, and you'll earn more money," which I thought was kind of cold at the time.
Yeah.
And it was good advice. Somewhere in the process, you should get out, and you can do this on your own by building things on your own, but learning how things go together. A lot of the best architects in the United States were heavy into mechanics. They were guys who learned from the construction end and had design capabilities, then came back into the design world with a full repertoire of how things go together, how leveraging, what does this piece of steel mean? What does this piece of wood mean? What can I do with this? And these guys, there's an immersion in the real construction is a great advantage also. It can't be underestimated how much that means. And the sooner you can get a kid into something like that, it's good.
So you heard that from Ken. Just grab a wheelbarrow and get busy.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to connect that to architect, but anyway, no.
Do it while you can.
Yeah. I remember hauling hay in those hay barns in August,
yeah.
And I kept thinking as a kid, there's a better way to make some money, you know.
Couldn't think of a creative way to stack the bales.
Oh, it was character building, that's for sure. So, Ken, thank you for being here. Enjoyed it very much. John, thank you very much. It's been very enlightening, and
enjoyed it.
Hopefully you'll come back, and again, I'll sketch out that new television studio, and we'll see what you guys
get to work on it.
Can do for us. Even though there is no budget, I'm sure you can work with me somehow or another. Yes, no, okay, no answer.
At least you're truthful.
Yeah. Up front, I'm truthful. That's true. Oh. Well, again, thank you for joining us here on City Connections. Ken Corbin and John Merz has been our guest here on City Connection, two local architects here in Enid, Oklahoma. I really encourage you to go to their website because you can see all the different entities from schools, the hospitals, the office buildings, downtown ballparks, the list goes on, of all the things they've been involved in. And their website is very enlightening, shows you a lot of their projects, and has all the photos there as well. And then you also meet the members of their team as well. So visit their website, and I think you'll enjoy that. Well, we've enjoyed visiting with you today on City Connections. Thanks for watching. This is Steve Kime for the City of Enid. Until next time, make it a great day. We'll see you again soon.